I've played some video games. One of the best things about running the LTGD community is seeing how many talented, wonderful, amazing, brilliant, and let's face it, attractive people are willing to send me stuff they've made, so that I can take the creative output they've worked so tirelessly on, pouring their heart and soul into, and crush their dreams under my foot like a disposable plastic cup at a house party, which means it must be time to play some more of your creations. So, let's talk game design. The format for this will be the same as the last one. I've played some video games, I know I already did that bit, and I'm going to cover them as if I'm talking straight to the developer, in the hopes that they see this video and can take some useful feedback from what I tell them, because I imagine that's why they submitted it for me to play in the first place. Let's face it, I'm not the facecam let's play type really, am I? The first entry today is Froggy, which comes to us from someone named Kragan. It's a 2D platformer where you play as a frog, presumably the one from the title. And speaking of that title, all I can think of is Froggy. So that's an immediate 0 out of 10. Not really. The main mechanic here is your big froggy tongue, which can kill enemies, grab items, and propel you into the sky, which is handy because you seem to be climbing some sort of mountain, so it's basically Celeste. There's a lot to like about this. The physics of the tongue are fun and satisfying, and chaining together a series of jumps with it feels about as natural as it can do, given that we're on a 2D plane playing as a frog by using a mouse. But there's a couple of issues that do need addressing. The first one is that every time you either die or beat a level, you get kicked back to the main menu, and have to choose a level manually. Don't do that, just either restart or jump to the next one. The next thing is the difficulty balance, which is really off. Level 1 is like a tutorial, then level 2 is harder than levels 3 and 4 combined. Level 5 is impossible. I still can't do it, and I tried for about half an hour. So look into why that is, other than me being bad at the game. Bit of a radical suggestion, but consider taking out most of the enemies. There's already a system where you're slowly getting poisoned and turned into a red frog, which is universal video game language for a bad thing. So adding in enemies that move and attack as much as these ones do in the quantities that you've got so far feels quite unbalanced. Remove a couple of them and maybe make the rest slower and less aggressive. Basically, calm the frog down. This one comes to us from Namida Sai, a regular member of our Discord where all of these games were submitted, and I have to say, oh my god do I hate it, and it's absolutely nothing to do with the game. The game is beautifully presented with very clear instructions and simple mechanics. You move two orbs at once, like the main parts of the Yin Yang symbol, and you have to try and get them in close proximity to each other without either one casting a shadow onto the other one. It sounds really simple, but trying to actually execute them both at once is maddeningly hard. Not because the game is badly made, because it's not. It's responsive and most importantly consistent. The physics are a little bit floaty, but they remain at the same level of floaty throughout, so there's nothing wrong here other than the player's own skill at the game. And that's why I hate it, because I'm bad at it. I think a lot of people might struggle with the momentum on the two orbs, so consider lowering the deceleration to make the drift a bit less erratic. But that's really a decision you need to make with regards to how much you want the player to struggle. Bit of a teachable moment here. It's actually fine to let people struggle to control your games, as long as you design around it, which you have. Your key mechanic involves moving two entities around a space, so the act of complicating that adds to the basic challenge of execution rather than puzzle solving. The decision you'd need to make is whether you want this to be a game about both physical coordination and solving puzzles, or just one or the other. It's great, but I'm awful at it, so there's probably nothing wrong with it. Speaking of the recurring theme of games I hated because I was bad at them, this is Reach by Meh. This person, them. This is another game where the physics might throw you off at first, but once you get used to them, they're actually pretty amazing. If you've kept up with my devlog series on the 2D platformer that I'm currently making, go and wishlist reiterate on Steam, you'll know that one of my main inspirations is a game called N++, a game about a ninja which has very specific physics and movement, where all the challenge comes from mastering this unique application of force on the player. Reach is a lot like that. You can flap your wings to jump or speed along the ground, and you can chain that together with wall jumps to create a string of movements that, when you get it right, look incredibly elegant. Get it wrong and you look like one of those baby birds at the zoo that hasn't quite figured out how their wings work, so they're just flapping uselessly at the floor for a bit while everybody laughs at them. The game so far has an easy sort of introduction section and a hard challenge section, and I think as this game continues development, it's got the chance to turn into something really special. I don't actually have much in the way of feedback really, other than try and design something that's in between your easy introductory stages and your much harder you know what you're doing stages. As you move towards a full game, consider a proper progression of levels so that the challenge can grow a little bit more organically, because I think there's a lot of scope for brilliant platformer gameplay here and I'd love to see it handled gently. You'll be asking a lot of the player, so make sure you're not leaping too far ahead of them. I talked about this in my recent devlog about designing difficulty, but consider having a few levels that are of about the same difficulty so the player has a chance to learn a new skill and then grow comfortable with that skill before moving on. Next up is a great example of pick up and play one more go design from Awesome Red Flare. The Room of Doom is a simple one-screen platformer where obstacles fly in at random and you need to survive for as long as you can. There's 3 levels and they're all about the same, so don't feel bad that I haven't included any footage from the other 2. I promise I've played them, I just prefer stage 1. There's a brilliant simplicity to this that you find in games like Super Hexagon, where the fast turnaround time of each attempt and usually how close you get to doing just a little bit better compels you to have one more go. In fact, the only things I suggest aren't really to do with the gameplay at all, they're to do with the user experience. The controls for this game put left and right movement on the arrow keys, which is correct, and then put jump on the spacebar. This is fine, but because of the simplicity and immediacy of the jump, I think you can tie jump to the up arrow and really accentuate the speed and reactiveness of the gameplay by encouraging one-handed playing. I might also have misunderstood, but I can't find a way to restart or select levels without using the mouse. For a game like this that lives or dies on the time between deaths, you want to be able to get into your next attempt as quickly as possible, and for that I'd suggest tying retry to the enter key, or something that doesn't require me to take my hand off the keyboard to make a selection. There's also a bit of a delay in restarting each level, and while level transition effects are nice, they shouldn't come at the expense of player immediacy. Basically, if there's something in the way of you immediately restarting when you're dead, get rid of it. Otherwise it's just really good. That's it, good time, enjoyed it, well done. I can't even say anything sassy about it, so you know it must be good. It's a tale as old as time. Boy meets girl. Girl is an alien from another planet. Boy mows down wave after wave of green slimy alien creatures in a quest for justice. That's not the plot here, by the way. As far as I know, this game doesn't have one. I just got inspired. I bet you can't guess what you do in a game called Eliminate the Aliens. That's right, it's a tactical RPG about interpersonal relationships in 19th century France. Okay, it's not. It's a very tight little twin-stick shooter with good movement physics and an intelligent sense of progression. What I particularly like is the sword, or lightsaber or whatever. It's really difficult to make melee a viable option in top-down shooters, unless you're Hotline Miami, so the short little slashy thing and the added unique bonus of being able to bounce back enemy bullets is really clever. I also particularly enjoy the boss battle, which has wave patterns that suggest you really understand how challenge and variety works in a top-down shooter. A couple of the weapons could do with rebalancing, but that's something you'll find with most games in the genre, and you won't really be able to do anything about that until the game's a bit further along, and you're opening it up for strenuous testing from a multitude of people, which I'd recommend you do eventually. Just add more, really. Excellent starting point, keep going. I heard this thing once, which I'm pretty sure isn't true because it sounds ridiculous, that if you try and force yourself to be ambidextrous, i.e. as good with your left hand as you are with your right or vice versa, you can actually end up giving yourself brain damage. As I say, that's probably not true, but if it was, this game would be the best way to accomplish that brain damage. It's based on a picture from an album cover from an obscure band nobody's ever heard of, and it's deceptively simple. You think you know what you're doing, it's only 6 buttons, and although controlling 3 people at once seems weird, you're reasonably sure you can handle it. And then you play it, and your brain forgets how to tell your fingers to do things. You suddenly come to realise that you might have the big dumb, and you're nowhere near as good with your reaction times and hand-eye coordination as you thought you were. And then you feel bad. This game makes you feel bad. But it's actually pretty good. It's a good example of a game knowing what it wants to do and then accomplishing that point and nothing else. It's very small in scope, and that might sound like a criticism, but what that means is it's finished and you can play it. It's a fun little experiment and worth checking out just to feel utterly inadequate. Who among us doesn't dream of being in a successful band, standing up on stage wailing on a guitar, with hordes of screaming fans at our feet who we then brain mercilessly by lobbing said guitar at their heads? That's Melodic Massacre, a kind of surrealist top-down shooter where your fans have gone crazy and are trying to kill you for some reason. At the heart of it is this really neat mechanic where you throw your guitar and then dash to pick it back up again. It's a novel way to handle shooting in the genre, and I think you can make more of it going forward. The boss battle is good, but it's really jarring, because up until then there's this almost postal-like cathartic sociopathy going on, and then there's just 2 giant hands trying to smush you into paste. It's not bad at all, it's just weirdly disjointed. Maybe make it part of the set design as if Gene Simmons is being assaulted by his own stage show. Going forward, I think you should really accentuate the shoot and dash mechanics since it adds a unique sense of strategy and placement to the gameplay. Top-down shooters are all about movement and positioning, and this is a combat mechanic that ties directly into that, so you're definitely on the right track. We finished today with Gambaru, probably the most aesthetically pleasing game of the bunch. It's a standard 2D platformer, which sounds like a criticism, but it's not. You've got a few mechanics: jumping, wall jumping and sliding. And because there is a variety of mechanics that includes wall jumps and slides, I can't help thinking you need a double jump. You don't actually need a double jump, but it seems weird to have wall jumping and sliding and not have one, especially when you're playing as a little ninja dude. It's like having a pizza without some kind of garlic and herb dip for the crusts. You don't technically need the garlic and herb dip for the crusts, but let's be honest, you want the garlic and herb dip for the crusts. The collision detection detection is very tight on some of the obstacles, and sometimes the wall jumping is kind of janky, but otherwise this is very impressive. The levels are probably difficult for the opening of a game, but I think that's something you have to balance over time, so don't worry about it too much for now. And that is going to do it for this segment of me playing your games and smushing your achievements into a sloshy paste. If your game was in this video, then I hope whatever I said was helpful, and you can always come back to the Discord, to our dedicated channel for talking about game design, and talk it out if you want. If you'd like to submit a game to be played on the channel, I have a bit of advice for you, and this is the part where I sound like a terrible person, but please hear me out. Bring me stuff that you're proud of. Bring me things that you want to take further, or things that are finished and as polished as you can get them. Bring me games that have pushed you to the limit of what you're currently capable of, that you maybe need an outside view of to take to the next level. This is a very roundabout way of me saying don't bring me game jam games. If you're entering a game jam, you'll already get people playing and feeding back, and if you don't get enough feedback, then you're not entering the right game jams. Now, I don't say this to be harsh or dismissive of your achievements. I say it because if you bring me something that you already know isn't as good as it can be, then what am I supposed to tell you? It's full of problems you already know about. It plays like a game you made in 48 hours because that's exactly what you did. What's that going to do for you, really? I also say this because I'm thinking of you and your visibility alongside your project. Imagine if I get a sudden influx of 50,000 viewers. Shut up, it might happen. And now you've got 50,000 people associating you with a game you made in 20 minutes that doesn't work properly. You don't want that. You want to be the game that I want to end the video on because it's the most polished one of the bunch. If you're not put off by that and you think you've got something that fits the bill, that you really do need a bit of guidance and advice on, then head over to our Discord server. The link's in the description. Join the games channel and link it up. Include a description about what you're stuck on, what you'd really like advice on, what you're proud of, and what you're aiming for. And if you've liked this video, then remember to like the video you just liked, and subscribe for more videos like the liked video you liked. And I'll see you the next time I'm thinking, hey, let's talk game design.